I say burn the fucking bridge and go forward. Make it happen. I couldn't stay another day. I drove home and I said, I'm not going back no matter what. And so that drove me.
Yo, Chris, man, what are you doing? What are you up to?
I'm just helping people reinvent their lives. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Well, I'm going to join in.
Cool.
God bless, we're breaking these runs. Life too short to play on speed run.
All right, Chris, my brother, what is going on Reinvention today? What's on our docket?
Today we're meeting with a real life reinventor with a story I know our audience is going to really find inspiring. So I show up at this business networking breakfast where we've all got to give these 45-second spiels about who we are and what we do. And I'm a little nervous, honestly. Like, these people all seem to know each other and I'm the new guy. I'm here to talk about reinvention, but like, everybody in this room is already an entrepreneur. So like, how is this going to land? Then this guy gets up to tell us about his real estate business and like somehow in that 45 seconds manages to mention that he used to be a teacher. And I'm like, oh, dude, this guy's a reinventor. And then so after I do my bit, he comes and introduces himself. We hit it off. We talk a little bit more. We'll talk about his story. But first, I just want to say, John Anthony Savoca, welcome to Reinvention, man. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate it.
And listen, man, we'll get into your story. And I'm so excited to share this with our audience. And I'll let you tell it from the beginning, but I just want to tell the people who are listening, if you feel like you're locked into a work situation that's no longer working for you, I want you to lean in and listen close to this one. Because John's not someone who like had a corporate career and then he switched to consulting on the corporate work he had been doing. Like, he completely shifted his field. He started from scratch, and he is one of our middle-aged brothers. So we're taking on some of your built-in narratives and excuses about it's too late, you don't have the experience, you need more runway. Like, we're not saying it's easy, but we are saying it can be done, and John is proof. So John, with that, man, let's start at the beginning. First, let's talk about your original career, and in the context of like, when did you start to think, I might need to make a change?
So I think like a lot of teachers, I was 25 years in. You start to kind of count the years to the end, you know, how long before I can retire. And then, believe it or not, that's a very, very common conversation in the teaching world. Like every teaching career from the start of it, if you stay more than 20 years, everything changes so drastically, right? I mean, I was always counting the days till the end. I'd say about after 10 years in or so. But my last year, the year I was going to leave, I knew I had to leave for two big reasons. One, I wasn't happy in the career anymore for a variety of reasons. We can get deeper into that, you know, throughout the conversation. But the second big reason is I have an adult son who's autistic. He aged out of the school program, and he's the kind of kid who's a life skills kid. He has staff that comes at 8 a.m. They stay until 8 o'clock at night. And since he was going to be leaving the school program, we were just very uncomfortable with like a day program. It's a whole different kind of situation. And so we run the program right out of the house. And I knew that if I turned to this particular career, in part, you spend a lot of the time working out of a home office. Probably 85% of the time I work out of my home office. And so when dad's in the next room, you know, they treat your child different. So those were the two big reasons. So my objective was to make it through the school year. At that point, we were running it out of the house, but you know, people were meeting at the house. My wife and I were taking turns taking off from work. It was really, really stressful. She's a nurse for Northwell. By January, in conjunction with some things going south in the school program, and really when I say going south, it was, I just didn't have the patience anymore, frankly, with, you know, the whole environment between a handful of kids that would be tough, a handful of parents that would be tough. And let me just preface this by saying, you could have, and this was throughout my teaching career, 25 kids in the class, 23, 24 of them are dreams, and their parents are fantastic people. One or two can really make it very difficult, along with the difficult administrator, that sort of thing. And by January, there was one event that just, I'd already started selling real estate, I guess in November. But January came, there was one day I left and I was like, I'm never going back. And we're gonna let the chips fall where they fall. So that's what got me, that's what it was like to leave.
Quick question, just if you're open to sharing, like, before I ask the second question, how old were you when this was going down? I think you're mid-career, right?
Great question. No, I was 54. And part of the reason that I was trying to make it until the end of the school year was I turned 55 in July. And at that point, I left a lot of money on the table, frankly, because I would have needed to stay until 60 to get my full pension.
So mid 50s, had motivation to stay at the current job. My sister's a teacher, okay, in New York, in Westchester. So I'm very familiar with the career path. I know the whole deal, and she's a little bit older than you/us right now. So she's also in a situation, not reinventing like you did, but it really feels like you went against the grain in a bunch of ways, but you also had motivation, right? Like you just were done with the job in certain areas to the point where you left money on the table. But you also had this other interest. Oh, by the way, you also had your personal situation with your son, right? Like what a beautiful thing. That's your priority in life, it sounds like, and it should be. And you had that motivation as well. But let's talk about the reinvention itself, right? So it sounds like you went into real estate and that's what you're doing now. When did that start to emerge for you as something that was interesting? Was it a side hustle at some point in the past? Like, when did real estate start to come into view? Because this is really where reinvention is real for people. Like there's people out there listening to us, John, right, who are either have a side hustle or thinking about something else or even exploring it or maybe even further down the path where you're at. And so it helps to understand the story, right? Like why real estate? When did that start? And then there was a tipping point where it became your main thing where it is now. So walk us through that journey of the actual career shift.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew there was going to be a lot of flexibility in it. I knew that I would be able to work out of the house. So that was the start of it. I had actually sold my own property for sale by owner 5 years before I started. I was kind of comfortable with the game. I had a general idea of what it was. I also wanted to be in an ecosystem of more money, frankly. I was shooting toward being toward the higher end of the market. And I knew that was an arena where there is a lot of money moving around. And one of the biggest things for me in teaching, there's a lot of ideas and conversation and gossip about one teacher being better than another. A teacher may win Teacher of the Month, Teacher of the Year, blah, blah, blah. It's all subjective bullshit, in my opinion, right? There was no numbers behind it. The thing I loved about being in sales is there is a scoreboard. It is public. You can see how good you are or how good you're not. And there's no debating over that. And so that was a real driving force for me. Just to throw in there, my second year out of 250 guys, I was number 4 in the whole company. So that was something that was like really inspiring for me, that I knew my effort was going to show up both monetarily and, my colleagues would see it.
And John, a little bit more in terms of real estate itself. So you sold your house by owner, right? That's cool. When you did that, were you sort of like seeing inefficiencies, or sort of had you considered talking to a realtor or something and it didn't really work out? Like, was that the germ of the idea of, hey, I can do this? Is that what happened there?
So one of the things that really pushed me in the direction was I saw the transition happening with social media and the degree to which homes were being marketed with higher production video and that sort of thing. And I had some experience in front of a camera with a little YouTube channel that I used to run. And I was inspired by 2 realtors. One of them was a woman named Shannon Gillette. She is a realtor out in Las Vegas. And another guy, Brad McCallum, who is a realtor up in Canada. And they were both doing it differently than anyone I had seen. They both had really big business, teams of realtors working for them. And instead of just taking, definitely not just photographs or just doing like a very general run through with nobody talking or narrating, they were doing really highly produced video. And I thought I could do it. I felt really confident I could do that from the start, which I was able to do. So that's what pushed me there. And I was thinking initially, that would be my competitive edge here in the Long Island market because there's very few people doing it. Now that has since changed a bit. I'm still doing the super highly produced videos and I stand out because of it, but that wasn't quite enough to separate myself from, other realtors, although it did help. So that was a big piece of it.
I want to jump in on that for a minute because, when we talk about reinvention and successful reinvention, and I love when we get, Chris, these like real life reinventors, because what I always see, and I know you're laughing and probably thinking the same thing as me, is that, and John, like we have like tenets of reinvention, things that we recommend on this podcast for people to do, right? Like in order to be successful in their reinvention. That's the purpose of what we're doing here, right? To motivate people and to open their eyes that they can do it. They can make the shift just like you did. And one of those tenets is clarity. Okay, well, what is it that you want to do? And you clearly had an experience of selling your own house that got you excited. You want to make more money. You had your story about that. you had clarity. Building new skills, like, is another one. Like, how do you actually get the skills that you need to reinvent yourself? Okay, and you've touched on some of that, but one of the specifics in terms of building new skills that we talk about is finding others out there who've done it, getting models of people. And you did it so uniquely. You found these realtors up, I think you said in Canada, right, that were doing these high-end videos, and you thought to yourself, wow, they're doing great. They're really successful, what I want to do. No one's doing that in my market, right? Let me go ahead and take that approach, right? I don't know if you were cognizant about how smart that was, but like, that's what we're talking about. Boom. That is like exactly the creative thinking that is necessary, that most people that we work with, John, who are inside of corporate, they come to these very like boxy way of looking at things. Like the vision is very limited. But what you've done and what all successful reinventors do is they breathe and they open up and they look at a larger spectrum of the market, you know, and they find something that resonates with them, just like you did. And then they take it and make it their own, because we're all borrowing ideas, you know, there's nothing absolutely new. And I love that, man. I want to honor that part to it, because this is a teaching moment for people listening to our podcast. Like, you can do anything. And there's people out there that are massively successful doing the thing that you want to do, and you can learn from them. And guess what? Those people aren't better than you. They're just not. They just figured it out and they're doing it. So I think that's a big part of how you found success.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, I appreciate that. Seeing those models, feeling like I could replicate it was definitely a big piece of it right up front, for sure.
I'll add on to what Todd was saying, right? By the way, Todd, yes. We talked over each other almost before, because I was going to say the same thing that you were saying, because I heard it, right? But also, John, you had done some YouTube, maybe you had a channel, right, beforehand. And, you know, you were an educator for 25 years, right? It all comes across, like I watched some of your social stuff. You're tapping into your experience, your ability. You were always standing in front of an audience and communicating to an audience. You had your YouTube channel. You saw this model out there. You know, you recombine that together, because that's another theme we talk about is a lot of people, you know, you're 45 or 50, you're at this point in your career and you're like, well, I've been doing this thing. I got to keep doing this thing. But you have so much experience that you can tap into and repurpose. Like for you personally, John, were you cognizant of that? Like, did you have this feeling of, oh God, I'm starting all the way over from scratch? Or was it really maybe just more like optimistic and energetically recombining what you'd done? Like, how'd you feel about it when you started?
I was very optimistic and I was very energetic. And I did actually borrow money from my house to float the boat a bit, because I kind of thought to myself, all right, I got to get to the following October or so with the cash that I had. And so I borrowed some money just to make myself feel a little bit more confident, so I wasn't stressing out, you know, about the fact that I didn't have money coming in from day one. But I did feel very confident that my presentation skills as a teacher were going to transfer to this business, because there is a lot of that. The Long Island market is very different from the rest of the country. You do spend a lot of time, you know, teaching buyers and sellers what to expect. Right now, I'm focusing on people who have been in their houses at least 25 years, right? And I'm holding little events where they'll come and I'll talk to them about the downsizing process, the sales piece of it, the estate planning piece of it. We bring in an estate planner, we bring in a downsizer, we bring in an estate sales specialist. So that is just like teaching, frankly. You know, you're getting in front of a room of people and you're educating them. You're not asking for a sale or anything like that. So that was very much like teaching. You know what, I didn't know specifically that's how I would use my teaching skills, frankly. But look, teachers can do a lot of things. There's no doubt about it. If more teachers left teaching and used those skills in other arenas, I'm certain they would make significantly more money, that's for sure. Yeah, so that's kind of how I thought about it. I felt pretty confident about the skills I was bringing out to the market.
Yeah, and I got to say, like, again, you're mimicking some of the things that we talk about in reinvention. There's two things there. The first was you did a financial plan, you know, and you mapped out your money in a way where you saw what your runway was. By the way, John, we have a workbook, okay, like on our website, reinvention.biz, that we help people in a 7-day process do a lot of the things that we're talking about here. And one of those days is a focus on financial planning. Like, how much money do I actually have? Where am I spending money? And how much runway do I have to reinvent myself? It's such an important piece, and you did that really naturally. But I want to talk about what you said before, which was like you become the number 4 salesperson out of a large group, right? And so I think a lot of your natural abilities and your training as a teacher, I do think it translates. So your reinvention, while sounding very different, going from a teacher to somebody that's selling real estate sounds maybe dramatic. There's probably a lot of crossover in terms of your skills that you use smartly. But I'm curious, like, what you're seeing out there in terms of your success in this new career. How much would you say it relates to your relationships and your relationship building with other people? It sounds like it's a lot of it, but I want to get your take on it versus the more transactional, I'm a salesperson, I just need to hit numbers and like reach out to a lot of people. What are you finding, in terms of your new success, in terms of the relationship versus transaction piece of what you do? How do you hold that?
The relationship piece is paramount. So when I first started looking into how somebody should start to do business, the coaching was get on the phone, cold call, all of the traditional ways that you might drum up business. But we are going through like a historical time here on Long Island with our lack of inventory, frankly. And it was just, there were no leads to call, frankly. And if you're not aware of that, here on Long Island, what makes a market a seller's market is the amount of inventory that we have. Long Island has 2 months worth of inventory, meaning that if nothing else came to the market within 2 months, there'd be nothing left, right? So there's almost nobody to call. And who would you call? You'd call people that were trying to sell their houses by themselves. You would call people that had expired listings. Well, there's no listings expired. The only listings that are expiring are the people that are grossly overpricing their house. So I had to lean into the relationship piece. So I joined a networking group, and somebody gave me some really good advice. They said, Johnny, if you're going to join that group, get one of the speaking roles. Try to get on that leadership committee, which I did, because every week you get to talk, you stand up more. And it's also a long game with the networking for sure. My first year, I didn't get a single lead. My second year, I did over 50,000 in commission. And this year, it's going to be probably closer to 100 just from the leads that I got through networking. So it's baked into my day. And it's something that we do not passively. It's absolutely deliberate. So the relationships piece is huge. I was kind of surprised that the network that I built as a school teacher didn't really transfer to any business at this point, frankly. They all know that I'm selling houses from my social media and, a phone call here and there. But I built a lot of relationships after leaving, the school building. So yeah, that's a really big piece. In fact, what I was just talking about in terms of putting on these presentations aimed at downsizers, I'm doing it with people in my business network. I'm doing it with the estate attorney there, the estate salesperson, the mortgage person. So those relationships have been huge.
I think that that's so important for people to hear, right? Because I think I know that when I came out the door of corporate and I said, I'm starting my solopreneur business, 2 things that you said just resonated with me. One, I kind of thought all my concentric circles of people I knew would be like just throwing clients at me. Did not happen. 2, I sort of was thinking very transactionally, like, where is my next person that I'm going to like latch onto and work with? So the relational aspect and in committing and investing in relationships, I think is really important. We're talking about real estate here or coaching. I think it pretty much across the board is going to apply to anyone who's going out and launching their own thing. It's a long game. It's about connections. I wanted to also just get into tactics with you a little bit. So you joined a business networking group. What were some of the other things you did to just like invest in relationships in the very beginning when there was sort of like you turn the spigot and nothing comes out and you go, okay, well, we got to find water somehow?
Well, there's something called geographic farming where you basically go knock on doors in your neighborhood. And I started by I live in Oak Beach, Long Island. Todd, come from California, would probably love it here. We're on a barrier island. The bay is on one side, the Fire Island Inlet is on the other. It's a very, very small community. There's about 250 of us. And I started I had mugs made with a picture of the Robert Moses Bridge on it. It said Oak Beach, Long Island, my name. I put a business card in there and some chocolates, wrapped it up. I gave them out to every single one of my neighbors. I didn't knock. Long Island is a little different. I have an assistant that works for me, a virtual assistant, and she does, this is when I was still cold calling and I'm not anymore, but she told me that we don't answer the phone here on Long Island. She does cold calling in Ohio. She does cold calling in Canada for other realtors. Long Island's a different animal. And not only do we not answer the phone, we don't answer the door. We're very weary of that. So I don't actually knock and force a conversation. I just leave it there. And I'll do something like that at least 8 times a year. And if you look at my social media, I just dressed up like a bunny. And first of all, for the day before Easter, I just rode around the neighborhood. In fact, I was on the Long Island Wise Guy Instagram, which is, the guy's got over $100,000 followers. People send him stuff. They sent to me to show people, because I was up and down Ocean Parkway in a bunny outfit on my bicycle.
By the way, John, that organically hit my feed and I didn't even realize it was you. And then I go, oh my God, that's John. It was amazing. Yeah, it was so cool.
So I've done things like that. I dress up like the Grinch and leave things on people's doorsteps. I put flags, American flags, in front of every single person's house in my community on the 4th of July. They wake up to a miniature flag on their front lawn. And that led to last year, $3.25 million in sales in my own neighborhood.
I love that.
This is amazing, man. Like, are you having fun? I feel like you're having fun.
So much fun. I can't tell you how much fun I'm having.
Can we talk about that for a minute? And look, I'm not poo-pooing your previous career. Teaching is obviously one of the most important things that we need educators, great educators on this planet. This is not a call for people to leave education. I'm sure that isn't what you're about, but it's also about your life, right? Like your reinvention. And it feels like you're beaming. It feels like you're having so much fun. It feels like you've unleashed a lot of creativity. Like, are you surprised that you're also having this success? Like, how much fun is it to have reinvented and be so successful? Like, I feel like you have a lot of freedom right now to be yourself. It feels like you're very authentically yourself right now. Like, talk about that a little bit. I sorry to interrupt you, but I'm really feeling it right now that you did this and you took the leap and you planned it out. You did all the reinvention steps by yourself. You didn't even know us, right, when you did this, but you did it yourself. And now you're there and it just feels like you're free and having a blast.
Yeah, I am having an absolute blast. I am a very creative person. I don't like to ask for permission. School, you have to ask permission for everything. I like to try things that could be outrageous, and if it doesn't work, I don't do it again. I still kind of, move forward very, very quickly. And so, yeah, that is a tremendous amount of fun, for sure. That's one thing I haven't figured out yet. I got to get better at is I don't really have much balance. I'll say I don't have any balance. I work all the time, but it is a lot of fun for me, so I don't really mind. And school was much different than that. It was all very, very regimented. They told me when I was working, when I was off. There was a lot of big chunks of time where I was off. And so I really love what I'm doing. I'm having a lot of fun. And I do want to work some structure into this because while I am doing business, I'm still at a point in the development where I have a really hard time, predicting when the business is going to come in. And I'm kind of going in a direction with these workshops that I'm doing where I think that's going to become something that's steadier, frankly. But just back to the fun piece, yeah, it's a tremendous amount of fun. It's fun to be in front of people where I'm pretty good, frankly, from my teaching experience. It's fun to be part of this networking group where not only am I on the leadership committee, I do an education point once a week, and I'll teach sales or networking or mindset or something. It's a 5-minute lesson. And then I take video clips of it and I put it on my Instagram. So all of that's a lot of fun, for sure. Watching people see me being successful, those that probably didn't think I would be, is a lot of fun. So you nailed it, Todd. Yeah, I am having a lot of fun.
I think that's a secret that is lost on people on the internet right now. There's debates about this, right? My feed can get full of people who are like disciplined hustle bro junkies who are like talking about get up at 4:30 a.m. and do this for 18 hours straight and knock yourself out and blah, blah, blah. And like, there's obviously a place for discipline and it can create great results for people. But I think for a lot of people, what they're not really saying is the secret ingredient can be if you're having fun, the work doesn't feel quite as much like work. Listen, nobody likes cutting up clips to put on social media, but like if it's supporting your story and you're excited to get that story out there and it's a creative expression of who you are, and especially, listen, John, I identify with you because like I was in a career for 20 years where I felt like the creative part of myself was just not only useless in that career, it was almost like antithetical to it. Like you could not bring that to it. So to me, as I'm building this business and part of it is expressing my opinions and putting myself out there, like it's still work, but it is just much more natural. And it can happen at 9 p.m. and I don't feel put upon because it's like more of a natural flow state that happens, right? And so I think also for you, John, what I see, and I think what Todd picked up on, right? Because he's just meeting you here, and I've talked to you a couple of times. Your energy is so infectious, man. I mean, just the positive energy, and you're not putting it on, right? This is just genuine. It's coming through you, especially when you're doing something that's so personal as selling someone's home. They feel that, right? Again, in terms of message for the people who are listening, it's like, follow your fascination, your genuine, what genuinely attracts you. When you put yourself in a space of, I guess we'll say alignment is the coaching word, these things just flow through you. And John, even as you said, maybe a little too much. Maybe we need to put some boundaries on it so you're not like working through dinner all the time or whatever it is. But it's inspiring, man, truly.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think it's something where, it's funny, you brought up the hustle bro culture. I am one of the ridiculous early people. I do stay in shape. I train jujitsu 6 days a week. But having said that, I'm saying that because if I don't feel good at 11 o'clock and I want to take a break at that moment, I have the freedom to do that. Having that ultimate control over, the decisions that I make about how my time is spent is really, really important to me. Like, I'm never part of a meeting that I didn't decide to have that was totally a waste of time. So eliminating those things and having that control over my life is a really, really big difference too. So if I got to work on a Saturday to go show a property or whatever, but I have so much more control over my life during the day, it's not even close. I would take what I'm doing all day long.
So you mentioned this physical health stuff in jiu-jitsu. I'm actually curious, a little bit of a side question on this, but I think it's really important because we don't talk about it that much on this podcast yet, Chris, but I think we do because one of the things that I believe in, that successful reinvention also needs to honor our physical health, our physical energy, our habits, our routines. It sounds like you're somebody that's always been on that. How much do you think that plays a part or has played a part in your ability to make a career transition in your mid-50s, like the fact that you are in shape and that's a big part of your life? Talk to me about that piece, because I think this is something that a lot of the people we work with just miss. It's a lot of like getting more on the computer, getting fueled up on AI, getting fueled up on networking, all these things, like all like computer, like these are the muscles being worked out. But how much of this do we need to like expand and get in shape physically? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's as important as any other skill that you're doing. I've cut out a tremendous amount of other habits that don't work for me. I really don't drink at all, where that was part of my life in the past. I don't have any time to have a hangover. I don't have any time to have anxiety. So, healthy habits really, really play a big role, I think, in pushing forward, especially when you're dealing with so much unknown, right? I am one of those guys that I just naturally wake up early. I'm somebody who's way smarter at the crack of dawn. By 8 o'clock at night, I'm useless. And other people are the opposite, where they don't get going until the afternoon and they're doing work at 11, 12 o'clock at night. So my routine and the things that I do to stay healthy, both mentally and physically, have played a tremendous, in fact, I don't think I could possibly do it if the jiu-jitsu and the weight training and the other stuff that I do weren't part of it. It's also a confidence builder. I belong to this gym that's owned by a former UFC guy. There's probably a dozen professional or, amateur looking to be professional fighters there. And then everybody else like me, just your regular person. So, just to kind of build this network within the gym. And I'm 20 years older than everybody.
Right.
Like the next closest guy is, in his late 30s. And then everybody else are kids. And, to get respect from them, for them to be happy to see me, to be part of that culture, gives me a lot of confidence to push on with, what I'm doing.
That's so important, John. So first of all, in that realm and then in all these realms, is putting yourself in a room where you're inspired, where you're connected, where you're feeling energized by it, but also just more about the physical health in general. We don't always hear this like at the people that we're talking to directly, but you do hear it in the culture, like, I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to work out. And listen, I used to say that, honestly. I actually used to say it when I was in a corporate role, and then when I shifted into what I'm doing now, my life is more flexible, so of course I have more time to work out. But another secret sauce that people don't talk about, it's like if you invest in that part of yourself and you're physically moving around, and for me it's usually early in the morning too, and I think for many people it is, the energy you get from that, the confidence you get from that. If you have a bad meeting or a bad conversation that goes wrong, but you like ran 7 miles in the morning, it sort of doesn't feel, you're kind of like, whatever. Like you've already put yourself through it, You You already got your cauliflower ear boxed in the morning. So like, what can happen after that, right? So I think that's something that on a broader sense, I would say it's a reprioritization of our humanness. And that is what enables us to be so effective in our reinvented world. I do want to shift gears once because what I want to ask you, John, because we're having a great conversation here, and I really want to leave the people who are listening with some specific inspiration. Let's imagine someone's out there, they're 50 years old, they've got the golden handcuffs or just the handcuffs, and they feel like they got to stick around in this career for 5 or 7 more years to get that pension, to get that 401k, whatever it is. But they're just like, I'm done with this shit. John, what do you say to that person?
You know, this might be easy for me to say. I say burn the fucking bridge and go forward. You know, make it happen. I couldn't stay another day. I drove home and I said, I'm not going back no matter what. And so that drove me to, you know, move forward. Like, I'm going to meet the right people. I'm going to figure out the right actions to take every day. Other people are successful at it. I can be successful at it, period. And just let me add, I mean, I had the support of my wife. She was on board from day one. And that was really, really important, because if she was fighting on me, that would have made things much more difficult. Look, if I didn't leave that day, I don't think I'd be as successful as I am right now, you know? So that's my advice. I mean, I know other people say, hey, start making a little bit of money, do it over time. I'm the opposite. Burn the bridge and fucking go.
I love it, man. This is the first person, Chris, that we've had on there that was that uncompromising around it. But I think it's an important message. I mean, I'm a little bit like that. Chris, you know, I'm a little bit more impulsive. I will just burn it down, you know, and then deal with it, you know. And I think for some people, that's a really important thing to hear, that we all have the power to change our lives like today. You know, we do. We have the power to change our lives today. Such an important conversation, you know, that everyone needs to listen to. And your specific advice of, hey, like, don't wait, burn it down, you know, is relevant here. Like, this is a relevant thing that a lot of people want to tiptoe around and maybe not say that. Like, do it really very thoughtfully. And, you know, that's also potentially a recipe for never doing it, right? And so, like, let's go is the energy a little bit here, not to get into our 3 bro energy a little bit, you know, but there is something to that I think is valuable for everybody listening. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to share your story. You're very relevant to what our mission is here. I feel like a partnership with you, and I'm rooting for you, and I can't wait to see how big this goes. And just again, thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate being here.
Listen, when a guy who lives on a barrier beach says burn the bridges, you know he means it. Thanks, John.
You know, can I just expand on that if you don't mind? The piece I want to add to that, my family was on board with burning the bridges. You know, they saw what I was going through with this career and where we were. So, you know, that made it possible. It's easy for me to say burn the bridges, but if you have people in your close life that are pushing back against that. So once I got the okay from my sons, my wife, and it was on me, I did not even hesitate. And then I never looked back even a second to say, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
That's beautiful. I love that, man. Thanks again, John. This has been amazing, brother.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, until next time, tune in, Reinvention. By the way, if you're loving this conversation, we have others also coming like it. Make sure that you subscribe to our podcast, follow us along. Like, to me, this is the conversation that is relevant right now in the world. Like, this is it. So follow us along. We're just going to continue to name Reinvention, help people with their careers and their lives, and we look forward to getting to know you. Thanks again, John.